Ubuntu is what we call Hunu, which is as a community, we work as a people. We work as a community. And when a community is suffering, or an individual within the community is suffering or visits us as a community have to give that hospitality. We have to respect the individual, regardless of who they are. There may be a mad person, a mentally challenged person. There may be someone who doesn't have the same belief with us. But when they come into our space, we respect them. We house them. We feed them. We protect them. We don't let them be eaten by vultures. That's Ubuntu to me. It's so as a people and as LGBTI persons, regardless of our sexual orientation and identity, we are still part of a community and we have to be respected, and Zimbabweans continue to do that. My name is Matsikure Samuel and I work for GALS, which is known for many years as the Gays and Lesbians of Zimbabwe. I've been with the organization since 2003, working from as an officer up to becoming a manager that I am today. The organization was formed in 1990, and before then I was also part of the movement that came out as a member of the community. And GALS is there to promote, to protect, and to represent LGBTI persons in Zimbabwe. Well, I think in Zimbabwe, with the movement that has been there for the last 20 years, we have learned a lot around how to engage, especially the public, as well as engaging with government. And the best practices that we have learned over the years is that you need to look at, do you want to approach this issue of LGBTI rights using aggression or taking the non-aggression approach? And I think it depends with the context that you're coming from. And what we've learned is that when we started as a movement, we were so aggressive in trying to be recognized as a community. We were visible, we were on the street, we were challenging the state in different spaces that we wanted to disseminate information. And where we are at now, we've realized that sometimes it doesn't work because the state then comes hard on you and trying to oppress you. So we then had to reflect as a community and as a movement to say, what approach can actually work within an environment where there is further oppression and silencing of LGBTI persons. And that led us to find different ways of doing that. We started by doing one-on-one approach in order to create allies that are able to understand, have a buy-in in terms of what we're fighting for as a community. And that also led to us building allies within the government corridors that sometimes would work behind the scenes to promote our issues, but also looking at different other human rights organizations that are able to take our issues on board. So building alliance building became a platform that we're able to articulate who we were and what we were fighting for. And that also came with a lot of sensitization around what is LGBTI community, what are all these different identities, what are all these different sexualities, and are we alien to the culture that a lot of people feel we are very un-African and so forth. So we do a lot of sensitizations to do alliance building. And that also culminated into finding communalities and intersectionalities between the broader human rights discourse and the LGBTI discourse. And what we're trying to also let civil society and the public know is that human rights are indivisible. You can't choose one sect of human rights and say we can't deal with the other. And that help us to become integrated within the mainstream human rights discourse. We realized that the resilience of the community also helped us to be where we are today. The continuous visibility of different LGBTI persons that were willing to put themselves out there. We're also able to articulate to the government that we are not the enemy of the state. We are citizens. And for many years, we have been left into silence due to culture, which usually is very silent and see us, the conversations around sex and sexuality as taboo. And trying to create that linkage between who we are as a people who are not alien to the African culture, sort of help to understand that, you know, the humanity, the Ubuntu, the community that usually is promoted within our own cultures is actually the backbone of how to deal with people that may be perceived as quite alien to the culture that is usually referred to as the African culture. But I think also the issue of HIV also gave us an opportunity. And I think the public health approach helped us to start having conversation around how do we end HIV and AIDS, because many people were dying. So it brought different people that were usually hidden to conversations and to address some of these uncomfortable conversations around same-sex sexuality. Yes, the issue of language also has brought a lot of challenges within the African context, because a lot of the terms that LGBTI persons assimilate within Africa are also seen as sort of Western concepts. When we talk about gay, lesbian, bisexuals, these are not common terms that are actually found within our language. And I think to start with, people, especially if you look at the Zimbabwean context, the resistance was that we are trying to bring an imperialistic agenda through the backdrop of alien cultures and practices. And when you also look at the issue of demanding human rights, our president was quite clear that some of these rights that you want us to assimilate as a people are not part of an African culture, because we were using issues of transgender, queer, and in our culture, these were not words that were known. And I think what has helped us to be able to have conversations locally is to look and engage with different cultural gatekeepers to understand if there were any words that we were using before any colonial legacies that we now allude to, or before being colonized, or before engaging with other people that are not seen as part of the African continent. And when you engage with that, people can actually give you different practices that were part of our culture, where same-sex practices were actually part of a culture and were respected and assimilated. Is to actually have what I would call equal partnerships. And in an equal partnership, you need to understand what are the local approaches that work, and how can we use those local context approaches to enhance human rights. But also the issue of HIV, sexual and reproductive health and rights has also allowed us to create linkages. So that's also another platform that we feel international partners, we can continue to end HIV by being inclusive and using the best practice and evidence that they've gathered through their own researches, changing of laws and policies. If you look at not only United States, but other European countries, how they've come to embracing diversity, we can learn a lot from that. So what are the commonalities that we need to continuously champion as a movement? So that's something that we feel can actually be done by the international community. And I think also the issue of documenting human rights is something that needs to continuously be strengthened. And we can learn from each other. How have they been able to use that evidence to change the perception of their governments, the UN system, and also to have conversations within different communities. And I think actually having a SOGI rapporteur at the UN is actually helped to bring all those different voices from different continents in Asia, in Africa, and even in America, to actually have collective conversations, but also having a common agenda is something that needs to be continuously be supported, and we can actually do more around that. And what some of those gains to me is the acknowledgement of the LGBTI community by the state. The fact that we exist in different documents, that, for instance, if you look at our National AIDS Strategic Plan as a country, and from around from 2007 up to current, is always indicated and articulated that MSN, for instance, do exist in our midst, and there's need for us to have national programs that target that group. And as a city here, as a country today, in the current Global Fund proposal and funding that's coming to Zimbabwe, they've actually given at least 3 million to address MSM programming, not only at service delivery, but to also engage policymakers and how we can influence the change of law and policy. And the fact that GAUS itself has existed in the last 27 years in the same spot, in the same place, regardless of what the state says, and the oppression and the harassment and the violence that exists within the community, is a success to us, because we are still standing. I think we are the oldest organization in Africa. I think the fact that our constitution that is current now, which was amended in 2013, that we voted for, even in its introductory, it actually indicates that every Zimbabwean has to be treated with dignity. The growing movement of the LGBTI community in Zimbabwe itself and the existence, and to a point, less human rights violations that we continuously report on, also show the success. And I think being recognized in the region with some of our leaders like Martha Tolana, Keith Goddard, who started the movement, winning awards to say they've stood the test of time against one of the most homophobic head of state, is a success to us, because that in itself has led the organizations to continue to exist and have more people coming out and claim their rights as a constituents. The Human Rights Advocacy program, for me, changed my life in so many ways. Not only has it built my confidence as an advocate, but I think it came at an opportunity time when sometimes as human rights defenders, we get fatigued, we have burnout, and sometimes we feel we cannot change the community, or we cannot change the perceptions of our governments and communities around LGBTI rights. It capacitated me to be able to not only articulate the issues and what I'm fighting for, but it gave me the zeal to continue to fight and change the Zimbabwean society. Just a month ago, I went to a meeting in another city, and this gentleman came out to me and said, "I follow you. You are a good leader. You continue to speak on some of the most contentious issues that are seen as taboo." To me, that was a plus. And I think as an organization, it was worth it, because the skills that I learned, I continuously share it with my team.